Hi, it's Andy, and today we're going to get a little political. As you will have seen, I'm not sure when this video is going up, a couple of weeks ago or so, start of November, the American election took place, and well, we all know how that ended up. I'm not going to get into it because that's not what this video is. In response to the election results, a lot of people on bookish platforms, so I've seen it a lot more on Book Talk and on bookish threads, and that's kind of where I hang out and see more people to do with books. A conversation was struck up about how political reading is. Now, there's a camp that says that reading is not political, and there's a camp that says, are you high? Of course, reading is political. And I am on the reading is absolutely political side of that. So I've literally just gone round my shelves and started hauling off books that I just want to show you to prove that reading is inherently political. Now, there's so much more that can be said about why reading is political. And I hope I've covered a lot of it in the books that I've chosen. I'm never going to be able to hit everything because this is a spur of the moment emotional response, I'm not going to lie. But reading is inherently political. If you can read and nobody has stopped you from reading, that is political. Girls in so many countries either still to this day are not allowed education, are only allowed education up to a certain age. Even in this country, girls were only allowed a certain level of education, or were only educated, you know, not even, I don't know when girls started to be educated the same as boys. Poor people have always been historically less educated because they didn't need the education for the jobs that they would be doing. For example, farmers are a great example. Farming families, they would only teach the kids or have the kids in school enough to work the job that they were doing, and then anything else was just, there was no point in it because what are you going to get out of it? Things like going to high school, secondary, university. Actually, high school and secondary used to be divided here, and I can't remember which one's which, but I do know that my granddad went to one and my gran went to the other because my gran, and I quote, wasn't as smart. That's what she says, that she wasn't smart enough to go to, I think it was the high school, so she went to the secondary. Whereas my granddad is smart, and so he went to the high school. That is what she was told when she was a child. That's not accurate. Like, yes, my granddad is more academic minded and my gran is more physically gifted. Like, there are so many things that my gran can do that my granddad can't, and things that my granddad can do that my like, that's just how the world works. It's not that she's not unintelligent. She's actually incredibly clever, and it's just the disparity in the fact that she came from a poorer family, she came from a larger family, only slightly. Like, she was in a position, she was a girl, she didn't get the same education level as he did, and so he went to high school and university and she didn't. And that's not even touching on people of colour. The one of the things that has been constantly used to keep people of colour down and to frankly insult them, I can't think of the right word, but I know there's a word for it, but to keep them down and to sort of degrade them and dehumanise them, is to refuse them education and call them stupid. Basically. For so long, I mean, obviously in the States there was segregated schools, other places that certain people of colour can and can't get education. There are places where colorism is a thing, so if you're usually darker skinned, I believe, you are seen as less than, and so you get less opportunities, such as things like schooling, etc. Places where your religion plays a factor into it. So in the UK there was a lot of religious schools, so if you were in the right religion, like the right sect, with the right church, things like that, you would get a better education than people who weren't. There are so many, like, gender, race, religion, all these things have been used against people to stop them from having access to education. And the number one fundamental that I believe for education is to read. At the end of the day, There are so many people, so many incredible people in history who are self-taught, and they are self-taught because they were taught to read. Like, I've seen so many stories about people who were taught to read by their parents but not at school, like, or they didn't get to go to school but their parents taught them to read. And then they've gone and done so much because that opened up so many doors to them, because they could do their own research, do their own education, work on themselves because they had access to read. So I just want to preface this as well. Obviously, things like dyslexia and other types of learning disabilities do come into that. Like, that is something that is, one, not your fault. If you have some kind of learning difficulty, it is not your fault. It does not make you less than. And a lot of the time, the access to education is because you're not accommodated, not because you can't do it. And I don't mean that in like a, if you try really, really hard, you can read if you're dyslexic. That's not what I mean. What I mean is things like, for example, there's now a dyslexic text. So like, I think is it Bloomsbury are bringing out dyslexia friendly books. Those are new. Like, so that is an access that dyslexic people did not have before. They didn't have the chance. They didn't have people who were able to support them. They don't have people, like, schools are so full and teachers are so overworked. They do not have the time to work to each individual child's needs. And that is obviously, it has devastating effects on the kids that are not in the norm. You know what I mean? So yeah, like, there are so many things that limit people's access to education. And to me, the one thing that opens things up is the ability to read. And again, when it comes to learning disabilities, dyslexia, and even people who are blind or deaf, this can also put barriers up. But reading, I'm not saying reading as in like audiobooks don't count or Braille doesn't count or etc, etc. Those things count. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, like, to me, reading is like gaining information from texts of some kind is probably the number one avenue into education, is what I'm trying to say. And not everybody gets those same opportunities to have that education. And currently what is happening in the US is that a lot of states and a lot of counties are banning books because they are vulgar, or include topics such as critical race theory that they do not want to talk about. And so I've collected books from my shelves that I want to show you that I have that I believe would either be banned or would show you, just explain like things like how reading is political. I hope that rant made sense. I am seriously, I'm not an expert in this in any way. This is purely a knee-jerk emotional response. Reading is political because it is not widely and readily available, and people are using their politics, their religion, and their beliefs to make it less available to people. And that is inherently political. Your ability to read, your access to education, your access to books is political. And yeah, I've just pulled, like I say, a few books off, and I'll explain why I think they're political, or like things off the top of my head. You get where I'm going with this. We will start, because I've got a lot of books. Also, these are only books that I've read. I've not included books that I have not read, although there will be a lot of books on my TBR that also fit the bill. Okay, let's go straight in with Frostblood. Frostblood covers a world where there are Frostbloods and there are Firebloods, and these two do not meet. There are two warring countries, and each believes that the other is lesser than. And so if you are a Frostblood in the Fireblood place, country, or if you're a Fireblood in the Frost, is that what I just said? If you are the wrong kind of person in each of these countries, you are subjugated and you are imprisoned and you're treated like you're a prisoner. It is inherently, if you are the wrong kind of person, you are treated like an enemy, regardless of anything else, just the fact that you are different. Red Queen, a world where the people with silver blood are the nobles and the nobility and the people on top because they have powers and they have been able to subjugate the Reds, who are people with red blood. Yeah, so again, not the right kind of person, not powerful. The red-blooded people are effectively, it's not even a working class, because it is more like a feudal working class, where if they don't produce, they will suffer, be it through starvation, be it through corporal punishment. And in this world, these ruling classes really are, like, they don't allow anybody to move up. You can't be a red and move up, even if in Mare's case, you're a red that has power. It doesn't matter that she has power because she's a red, and that means she's unacceptable. Who's Afraid? This is a series that is set in the backdrop of this sort of government, or this governing body for a bunch of paranormal creatures. So there are werewolves, there are vampires, there are banshees, there are nymphs and elementals and all these different types of creatures, and they're ruled over by this government. But this government are totalitarian. They are absolutely against anybody talking up against them. If you try and revolt against them in any way, if you talk badly against them in any way, you are found and you are punished, you disappear. And they also rule with an iron fist of these 3 women that we find out a bit later on. And so when the time comes that there might be something happening where they are getting replaced almost, things hit the fan, because the revolution is coming and the government does not like that. This also shows, because the main character is a werewolf, it has pack structure woven into it. So the pack structure for a lot of places is very patriarchal. I think hers is quite matriarchal, but it's still a very violent and very, like, I'm the top dog, you will kneel to me sort of place. Again, because she is seen as half of that pack. Like, her mum wasn't the right kind of, like, her mum was white and her dad was Maori, because the Maoris are the Maori family are the pack of wolves, and her white family are unacceptable. She's unacceptable because she is half Maori, half white, rather than being a full Maori wolf. So not all Maori people in this world are wolves. It just so happens that her family, the Maori side, are the wolves. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, so again, because she is mixed race, she is seen as unacceptable to the powerful race in this kind of world, which is the wolves, because she is half not them, if that makes sense. Percy Jackson and the Olympians. If you have read this and step away thinking that Percy in any way, shape or form would be on side of the wrinkled Watson, I don't know what you read. But you did not read these books. This boy steps up to the gods and says, you will treat us all better, you will do better, you will behave yourselves, and you will hold yourselves accountable. This boy he is loyal to a fault. He is just, even people that he hates, he will be on the side of if they are in need. Like, Percy should literally be, he's an excellent leader. And yeah, I don't want to ruin these books. That's the thing. I don't also want to spoil stuff, which I know they've been afraid just, so I don't want to blah blah blah. But yeah, this is also a world where the demigod, so for example, Percy has ADHD and is dyslexic and is seen as less than because of that, until he finds out he's a demigod. Like, then he is like the most powerful and he's like the top dog, but he has been beaten down so much by the schools that he went to because he has ADHD and because he is dyslexic that he feels worthless. Like, that is how disabled people are made to feel by these sorts of institutions. And that is how Rick Riordan's son was feeling. So Rick Riordan actually wrote this series for his son. His son was having a hard time at school because he has ADHD and dyslexia. And Rick wanted to create a world for him where these weren't downfalls, they were superpowers. And a lot of people I've seen people criticise these books because of the whole your disability is a superpower rhetoric being quite ableist. And that's not what Rick was doing here. He was turning round a very specific case. So his son felt less than because of his ADHD and dyslexia, so he created a story in which these were actually superpowers. Not saying like a regular kid with ADHD and dyslexia is a superpower, saying that in this specific instance, because he's a demigod, it's actually there are reasons for these disorders that he has. Talking of disabilities, Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. We have 2 disabled main characters. We have Bo, who has a prosthetic leg, which he lost very recently to the book's beginning, and he's still getting used to his prosthetic, which, you know, I think is really cool to have in a book, is somebody getting used to the prosthetic. And then we have our main character, Wynne, who has a tiny hand. Her words, not mine. Hannah Bonham Young is also an author with the same disability as this hand, where she has a tiny hand. Again, her words, not mine. Hannah Bonham Young is also an LGBTQ+ author, and she has other books with her other LGBTQ+ characters, but this one specifically focuses on characters who are disabled and seen as less than because of that, sometimes treated differently because of that, and then when one becomes pregnant, she has different issues that come along with being disabled and a parent, or disabled and pregnant, that a sort of non-disabled and able person would not have. And so there's also outside judgment and stuff like that from people because she's disabled. And I really feel for this one, because Hannah is disabled and she, like I said, she has the tiny hand. Her words, not mine. And also had a baby. Like, I think this was very much a self-insert. But yeah. So yeah. Disabled characters, I love to see them. While I'm on a roll of disabilities, we have The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is not only an author of colour, who are disproportionately picked up by publishers. Maria Lewis, who wrote Who's Afraid, also author of colour. I will try and remember to tell you from here on out. So The Kiss Quotient follows a Asian, I can't remember where she's from, Asian main character, female main character, and Asian male main character, and she has autism, and it causes issues in her life. But again, this is the sort of discussion. This whole trilogy is a discussion about disability and being a person of colour, and the way that kind of causes differences from what, like, I would face as a non-person of colour. As a white person. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get through this fast. These books also look at certain different Asian cultures. Again, I can't remember off the top of my head which cultures each one of the characters comes from, but there is things like language barriers when one of them comes to the US from where it is they're from. There's the fact of, like, cultural norms within families, etc, etc. So many things that are out with the norm for us. And then one of my favourites, Get a Life, Chloe Brown. This is the first time I really saw myself in a character, which just should not have taken this long. Chloe Brown is disabled. She has fibromyalgia and something else I can't remember, and she's in constant pain. She's been babied by her family and she wants to be independent, and so she moves out to be independent. But being independent and being disabled in the way that she is disabled they're not always conducive to each other. So yeah, this whole series again follows different types of disabilities throughout. We've got fibromyalgia in this one, we have anxiety rep in the next one, and then we have autism rep in the third one. And each of these books are written beautifully, brilliantly. Cannot fault them, not gonna lie. And I'm just gonna say Mbaku for Becca so you can giggle out of this. You know what I mean, Becca. You know what I mean. And if you've read the third one, you know what I mean. Again, Talia Hibbert, author of colour. Somebody who, again, wouldn't be picked up normally by publishers. And then we have Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This, again, to represent the entire trilogy. This is a sapphic trilogy, so this one follows Delilah and, I can't remember her name, Claire. And not only is Claire a divorcee, a single mum, she's bisexual but high femme, which is a whole different experience. Like, all those different things cause her life to be different in very specific ways. And then we have Delilah, who is basically the Cinderella character in this, because in my head this is a Cinderella retelling. She has a stepmom that hates her, she has a stepsister who is mean to her, and her dad died when she was very young and she was left with the stepmother. Tell me that's not a Cinderella retelling. But yeah, this is an entire trilogy of sapphic novels. Sapphic stories are I think they're very difficult to find, because so many people, and I've seen a lot of discourse on this through social media at the moment, a lot of people like to read male stories but then will balk at female stories, and that is just what no, you're not an ally if you will only read men together and not women. Like, that's not how it works. And also having bisexual characters and stuff, I think is, like, not relatively new, but like a lot of the time it was like gay or straight, like that was your choices, and a lot of the time straight was your choice. And now we have like the spectrum of LGBTQ plus characters coming out of the woodwork, and I love it. Okay, and then we have Cinder by Marissa Mayer. This whole world, again, is set in a sci-fi background dystopian future, a little bit of fantasy sprinkled in there, where people like Cinder, who is a cyborg, are seen as less than because they're not fully human, and therefore they are not treated as such. They are second-class citizens, and they're treated poorly because they're not fully human. Like, are we seeing the parallels with, you know, dehumanising people to put them under your boot? Hello. This, again, so many different things in this world are insanely political. Not even to mention, like, the alliances between the moon and, well, Luna and the Earth, alliances between all the different countries. Like, this is, yeah, but my point here I'm making is the fact that cyborgs and other people, robots, AI, things like that, are not human, and therefore they are not treated as such. Even though Cinder is very much, like, you can't just tell someone they're not human because you don't like what, yeah, I know what I mean, but I can't verbalise right now. Two that might surprise you. We've got Fantastic Mr. Fox and Matilda by Roald Dahl. Step inside the fact that Roald Dahl, probably not the best example. Yeah, but Matilda is literally about this little girl fighting for her right to read. She lives in a family where she is mocked for reading, she is kept from reading, she is told she's not allowed to read, and so she escapes to the library and she reads and she brings herself knowledge through reading. If you've not read Matilda, if you've read Matilda and don't think that reading is political, you need to read it again. And then Fantastic Mr. Fox. We have Mr. Fox, who is just trying to feed his family, and you've got these three farmers who have decided that because it's their land and they own it and it's their blah blah blah, they decide they're going to wipe out this family of foxes. And so the foxes and the other creatures create this rebellion to fight against, I don't know what this is meant to represent, if it's meant to represent capitalism, if it's meant to represent, I'm not sure. But, like, again, if you've read this and you don't understand the political, I mean, this one I suppose is a little less, like, overt, and it's like, but yeah, Fantastic Mr. Fox, in my eyes, it's talking about the little guy winning over the big bad, like, corporation, you know? Now we've got a couple of non-fictions for you. So Disability Visibility by Alice Wong, or edited by Alice Wong. This is first-person stories from the 21st century from people who are disabled. So this is specifically from, I believe, people who are in the US and disabled, and it talks about the way that disabled people are not seen and how they are seen in different ways, and it just looks at how disabled people are treated, because disabled people a lot of the time are not treated fairly. And do you know what? A lot of the time, all of the time, we do not have accommodations that make us able to work on the same level as able people, and the world is not set up for disabled people. Like, down to things like ramps. Like, people will slap a ramp on something and go, yeah, that's fine. And then someone's in their wheelchair trying to get up the ramp and it's like this. Like, they don't care. Like, ramps are accessible to everybody. People can walk up a ramp. People can roll up a ramp. People can use their sticks or crutches or rollators up a ramp. Like, ramps are accessible to everybody. And yet they're seen as a luxury for disabled people. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. There's also another one of this called Disability Intimacy, which I've not read yet, but it's about intimacy in disability, and it doesn't just mean sex, it means other forms of intimacy within disabled communities. There's also, see, my non-fictions are somewhere else, and these were the ones at the front, so I grabbed them. There's also Shane Burkhaw, who wrote a book called Laughing at My Nightmares, got other books, but he has SMA, and he has talked at length about issues with disability. Like, he literally was in danger recently of having his medication revoked. Like, his insurance could potentially have taken his medication, his life-saving medication, away from him because they didn't want to cover it anymore. Like, it is unreal. I will put Shane and Hannah's his wife, channel down there as well. Their videos are great. It shows the life of disabled people, an disabled couple, in such amazing ways. There's also, again, one I've not grabbed because it was in the back of the shelf and I've just remembered now, it's dark out there as well, is Disfigured, which talks about the fact that a lot of disabled characters in media are either villains, or villains are shown to be disfigured in some way to make them ugly. Like, think of what happened with the witches, where they were showing, I can't remember, it's something dactyly, I can't remember the word, where the witches had 3 fingers. And I know I'll look like Spock just now, but like they had, which is a real disability. People are born with like fingers missing and things like that, and that was used to show how horrifically, horribly ugly these witches were. Real people have these disabilities, real kids have these disabilities, and you're showing that they are the evil ones because they have these hands. Are you kidding me? Of course, it got absolutely slammed, as it should. But historically, we see villainous characters, for example, Hook, who doesn't have a hand. Like, they are the villains, they are the bad guys, they are seen as evil, and that has really lent into how disabled people are treated in society. And then we've got What's the Tea by Juno Dawson and The Tea in LGBT by Jamie Rains. Both of these authors are trans. Juno Dawson is a trans woman and Jamie is a trans man, and both of these books are incredible insights into what it's like to be a trans person. Obviously, there are so many trans people and they all live their lives incredibly differently, but these are just 2 perspectives, although Jamie's has perspective from multiple people within this, and I can't remember, it's been so long since I read Juno's. I think Juno's is more of like a non-fiction, they're both non-fiction, but this is like a non-fiction to help trans people and help trans youth through the process. This is more stories from trans people who've gone through the process or are going through the process. So they each bring different things to the table, which is why you should read both of them. But at the moment, trans people are unfortunately the scapegoat for everything. They're getting blamed for everything. They are getting targeted unbelievably, unfairly for what? And for what? No reason. For absolutely no reason. So yeah, also I'm just going to say, if you are in the queer community and you don't support trans and non-binary people, get your head screwed on right, because we are in this together. And that includes your POC trans folks, POC non-binary folks, POC queer folks in general. We need to support everybody. Like, that is not intersectionality. Intersectionality is not an option. It is mandatory. So if you feel like it's not, you need to look at yourself. Into dystopians. So we have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Again, if you've read this and you don't think it's political, what? Have you actually read this? This is about a world where the capital, the ruling class, take 2 children from each district, each of the 12 districts, a male and a female child, and they put them into a battle royale. They put them into an arena to fight to the death. And the one that survives at the end gets riches and blah blah blah, but they don't actually, because they then become, you know, something for the capital to just play around with anyway. This is a world where rebellion is the only choice because the capital continuously keep people down. Again, they have corporal punishments, they have quotas that they need to meet, they have people who are in such poor depravity situations that they are just, like, it's dystopian for a reason. Like, I don't think I need to tell you why The Hunger Games is political. If I do, please message me, because you're not paying attention. Again, dystopian, divergent. This is the world in where the world, I suppose, their world, is split into 5 factions. You have 5 factions and you must fit into one of these 5 factions. You cannot be divergent where you fit into more than one. You have to be one thing and one thing only. And if you are divergent, if you're seen as different because you fit into more than one of these categories, then you are out. Like, you're gone. So divergents have to keep themselves hidden. There's a whole underground movement of people who have, like, run away and stuff like that. Like, again, if you don't see how this book is political, you need to pay more attention. And then we have Babel. Babel by R.F. Kuang. R.F. Kuang, again, author of colour. R.F. Kuang, I believe, is Chinese. And this follows our main character, who is Chinese, and he is brought from Canton to the UK, to Oxford, to someone's home as they raise him, and then to Oxford to work as a labourer, basically. So his job is to do silver working, which in this world they use silver instead of, like, Industrial Revolution stuff. So for example, if you want a cart to drive itself instead, or a train to drive itself, instead of using, like, fossil fuels of some kind that we used during the Industrial Revolution. They used silver. So you inscribe on silver what you want this thing to do on one side, like a word or a phrase on one side, and then on the opposite side of it, you need a word in a different language that means the same thing, but also doesn't mean the same thing, because the further away the translation, despite the fact that it means the same thing, like the more jumps you have to make to get to it, the better it works. And so they've gone out looking for more and more exotic languages, hence why he has been taken from Canton in China, or I don't think Canton was part of China at that point, but Canton, because he speaks Cantonese, that is a more exotic language, and so he is used for this. He is used for this. He doesn't do this by choice. And there are other characters in this. So Remy, who I believe is Indian. It's been a while since I've read this, so I can't remember off the top of my head. Victoire, who is Caribbean? I believe she speaks Creole, some kind of Creole, French, Creole, so it's different from French, but she speaks French and Creole and is from like the Americas side of the world, but not America, so I think it's the Caribbean. And then we have Lottie, who is French? Is Lottie French? I can't remember now. Lottie doesn't matter anyway. That sounds so bad if you've not read the book. Anyway, this is, like, literally, people will tell you this book smacks you on the head with the point. So if you miss the point, I'm going to keep saying this, I can't help you. While we're talking about R.F. Kuang, we also have Yellowface, which is a book which is a critique of the publishing world. As I was saying earlier, people of colour are less likely to be picked up by traditional publishers than white people. And for why? For why? In this book, our main character is a white woman, and I can't even remember her name, it doesn't really matter. Juniper, that's her name. And she goes over to her frenemy's house, who is an Asian woman, and she has shown her this manuscript that she was writing about it's a historical, talking about the life of, I think it was Chinese labourers who were misused to lay railroad tracks. I don't know why this is the stuff that comes back to me. I think that's what it was, but it was historical based on real life, which, by the way, I want to read that book. Please, actually write that book, Rebecca. Please, please, please. And so, her friend dies in a freak pancake eating accident. I'm not even kidding. And Juniper decides to steal her manuscript and fob off as her own. And of course, this is a white woman publishing a manuscript about people of colour, claiming it as her own, pushing herself into a space that is not her own, and using her name, which is ambiguously kind of Asian, to forward her career on that. Now this is, like I say, a critique on the publishing industry, because obviously the publishing industry are more likely to publish her than her friend, although our friend Athena was highly published and Juniper was very jealous of her, and that's why she stole the manuscript. But yeah, basically this is white women pretending to be an Asian woman to get ahead. Who likes war? I like war. That sounded better in my head. Never mind. So In Memoriam follows two characters who go to a British boarding school that is like Eton, but is not Eton, because Eton also exists in this world, but this school does not, so it's like Eton, but not Eton. If that makes sense. I love this book so much. Like, you can't get me talking about this for hours. In Memoriam follows these two boys who already have privilege, because they are from, like, higher up families, what they're called? I can't even remember what they're called. Like, their fathers are politicians and from, like, society, blah, blah, blah. And so they go to places like Eton, where not everybody can afford to go or get into, because their families are not the right families. And then war breaks out and they decide to conscript into the war, and they are immediately made officers, despite the fact that some of the soldiers under them are older and have had much more experience. But these guys are big fancy posh boys, and so they get to be officers. And of course, every war book is inherently political, because war is caused by governments and fought by civilians. You can fight me on that, ironically. You know what I mean. So, of course, this is World War I, and so it is sort of Germany or Prussia. I don't know if it was Germany or Prussia, against most of the rest of the world. And this was a hellscape. This book really doesn't shy away from the kind of hellscape that these characters, these men were put through, these boys were put through. And it specifically reflects on boys who went to war. So, like, the oldest ones are, like, in their early 20s, 21 maybe. And it does not shy away from the way that they were treated. It does not shy away from the harrowing horrendous things that they had to see, and the ways that they died. And I think everybody should read this if you can handle that sort of thing, because she does not pull any punches. And she also took, one of the things I love about this book is that it has the lists of the dead. So this is like lists of missing and dead and wounded, and she took these from actual school newspapers at the time. So these are real people that have died. Cody and Bertie. This follows female pilots during World War II. Female pilots were not allowed to fight, despite the fact that they were skilled pilots, but they were allowed to ferry back and forth broken planes with no ammunition on them. Yep, you heard that right. So these women they would cart planes back and forth. They would also drop soldiers and stuff like that and spies into Europe during the Second World War, because this follows English characters. And this also follows a female spy, and the female spy, Verity, is being interrogated, and she is telling the story from her point of view. This also goes into this series. There's 2 books, well, there's actually 4 books based around the same time, but they're all kind of intermingle into one another. And this follows many different characters and the different ways they're treated because of how or who they are. So our main character in this is, again, from a high-up family, and so she is treated differently from how people from sort of working class backgrounds are treated. She is a spy, so therefore has access to other things that other people don't have. We have a character in one of the other ones who is set at a concentration camp, and you get to see how people are treated there again. There's a character in that one who is Polish, who is treated differently because she's Polish, because I think we all know how, if you don't know about World War II and the way that Polish people were treated in World War II, we need to talk. We need to talk. We also have another character in one of the other books who is, I can't remember if she's black or mixed race, but she is treated differently because of that, and she's also the carer for a woman who's German, who's treated differently because of that. Like, it's just, again, this follows women specifically because everything we see about the wars is about the men, is about the soldiers, and that is insanely important. Do not get me twisted, do not get me wrong, but seeing the fact that the women did actually not fight, although the Russian women did fight. They used to, the reason I'm doing this is the signal that pilots used to give each other when they were flying past. They used to wiggle the wings of the plane at each other to say hi, like a salute. And then the characters in the second book, the pilots, when they'd see each other in the concentration camps, would wiggle their fingers at each other as a sort of like nod to that. But what the Russian pilots used to do, especially the women, because they didn't have ammunition, is they used to dip their wing. If you can dip your wing underneath the wing of another plane, so like say we're doing demonstrations, say these are 2 planes coming towards each other. If you could get your wing underneath the wing of the plane passing you, it would destabilise the plane. And Russian women did not take prisoners when it came to flying, honestly. We're not done with the war. We are not done with the war. Salt to the Sea by Rita Sepetys is one of the saddest books I've ever read in my life, and that is saying something. This follows people who are, this follows the worst maritime disaster of something, I can't remember. It's actually a real thing that happened. Inspired by the worst disaster in maritime history, that's what it is. This follows multiple people who are evacuating from different countries towards this ship that is supposed to get them out of danger. And this is actually on the German side, or the Prussian side. One of the characters is a Prussian man, one of the characters is a Polish female, and she is also pregnant through horrendous means, and she has to basically pretend she can't talk, because if they find out she is Polish, they will do bad things. So she is also very, very scared. You see this story from multiple points of view, and they're heading to the ship to escape. Again, you've got a multitude of characters who come from very different backgrounds, and even though they have the same goal. Like I say, the Polish woman, the Polish girl, can't reveal that she's Polish, because even the people that are currently caring for her would turn on her. Like, this book, honestly, this book just absolutely got me. But it shows so many different characters and the things they've gone through. It also follows one of the Nazi soldiers on board the ship, and the way he's not one of the ones that's like being forced to do it because of threats and stuff like that. No, he is very much like on part with the Nazi message, and the way he acts and the things he does are just unreal. The fact that they're like forming a maternity ward on this ship, and oh my god, absolutely harrowing, this book. More acceptees. So we've got Between Shades of Grey. This follows characters who are sent to a labour camp. It's not a concentration camp technically. It is a camp for people who are displaced, and they're made to like break rocks and stuff in like the tundra. I can't remember where it is they're sent. Siberia. Again, this is based on true events, and the treatment that they get from the soldiers and stuff like that, the way that people are treated because they're from the wrong place. Like, it's been happening for time immemorial. Sticking with acceptees, we have The Fountains of Silence. This follows the Spanish Civil War, I think. It is Madrid in 1957, and again we have two different characters, one who is the heir to the American oil dynasty, and one who is a hotel maid who is suffering under the fascist dictatorship of General Franco. So this again follows, I believe it's the Civil War, a time where the sort of native population were suppressed and put under the boot and treated terribly, starved, and just... But this follows the sort of natives of Spain, and you know, you've got, like I say, Daniel is an American. He is high in society, and therefore he is better than everybody else, even though he doesn't think that. But like the general like upper populace of this area, like the military rule and stuff like that. Again, this is a piece of history that I was not familiar with until I read this, but shows incredibly how things can go so bad. Okay, I'm just going to do my last two World War II books that I've grabbed just for different reasons. So, The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This actually is on the German side of the war, so this is about Liesel, who escapes with her mother and her brother, and is actually narrated by Death. So Liesel first saw Death when her brother died on the train, to wherever they were escaping to. And Liesel is then adopted by this German family to kind of keep her hidden, keep her safe, and her mum goes off somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where. It's been a while since I've read this book. And so Liesel is a book thief. So Liesel loves to read, but books at this point are being banned and burned in the streets by the Nazis and the Nazi youth. Books are being burned and banned. I'm just going to leave that there. And this book is about Liesel, who is trying to basically keep reading, keep learning. Like, they have lessons in the basement where the couple that she's staying with, the husband, tries to continue to teach her despite the fact that she isn't really supposed to be learning these things because they're, you know, not part of the Nazi regime. And accessing books that shouldn't be accessed because they have been banned and burned. Banning books is one of the first things that Schmittler did. So just keep that in mind. It's not even... Sorry, something moved and it gave me a fright. That's not even some of the first things yet, but like banning books, stopping people from reading diversely, or read it like in the 1940s. What even was diversely? Like, yeah. So I'm just gonna leave that there. And my last World War II book, I promise, is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This follows two sisters in France, and it is occupied France, and it is about how they resist in different ways. One has a German soldier billeted with her, and she kind of has to keep him sweet despite the fact that the town kind of looked down on her for it, but she is scared for her family. She doesn't want him to take out his authority or anger on her family, and so she has to keep him sweet, as it were. But he is also like bringing her extra food and stuff like that, and at this point you'll do anything to help your family survive. The second sister is part of the French resistance, and she's helping people escape over the Alps. I think it's the Alps. Over the mountain range between France and Spain. And obviously this is exceedingly dangerous because if she's caught, she will be sent to a concentration camp. And guess what happens? This book, again, this book absolutely ruined my life. But it shows the way, again, that people can just do horrible, awful things. It also shows the way that people can really pull together and fight fascism and fight what's happening. Like, resistance doesn't have to be big. Like, these two women resist in very different ways. One resists in very small and subtle ways, and one resists in very loud and big ways. Both are just as good as the other, and both are, ways to get to a place where your country is safe again. Okay, that's all the World War II. Now I'm going to talk about The Underground Railroad by Gousto in My Head. This is a book about chattel slavery. This is a book about slavery. This is a book about the Underground Railroad and the people that used the Underground Railroad and the people that worked the Underground Railroad. I can't say it fast. Basically, these people are slaves who are trying to escape because I don't even think... Do I need to tell you why? Do I need to tell you why? Do I really need to tell you why? Do I need to tell you that owning another human is absolutely deplorable, and that is me being exceedingly kind, and not getting my videos punted off of YouTube. But owning people, no, it's not, no. So this follows our main character, Cora, who is a slave, and she escapes and goes through the Underground Railroad, but even after she gets out and escapes and has been out for years, she's still not safe. Like, there were literally people who would hunt down escaped slaves to bring them back to their masters. There was also people who would just grab black people off the streets, even if they were freed, and sell them back into slavery. Like, I don't understand. Obviously I don't understand because I don't live in that time. But how anybody could think it's okay to sell and... Slavery has not gone away. Slavery has been a thing in human history for time immemorial. The Greeks had slaves, the Romans had slaves, like, we can go further back, they probably had slaves. Slaves have been a use of our society for so long, does not make it right. And to this day, people are still in slavery in other countries. Slavery is still legal in the US as long as you're incarcerated, which I don't think people who are in jail, especially people who are in jail for certain things, should be allowed to have a pleasant life. But I draw the line at slavery. Like, seriously, guys. Anyway, this book was incredible. This book literally jumped out at me, like it was sitting on the thing in Waterstones and it fell as I walked past. And I was like, well, I'm taking you home. It won the National Book Award and it won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction for a reason. If you have not read this, honestly, read it. It is harrowing, however, and it does not shy away from some of the more brutal things. I think this actually does tamp it down quite a lot, but even tamping it down, it's still quite brutal. Okay, Song of Achilles, gay as hell. Greek, gay as hell. Just saying that, gay as hell. This one is banned for vulgarity because it's gay. Bite me. So this follows Achilles and Patroclus, and it is from the point of view of Patroclus, who was the best friend. They were roommates of Achilles, and this follows Patroclus and Achilles through the Trojan War, and what happens during the Trojan War. And it is gay as F. That's... We need to get moving, Andy. There's a lot of books still to get through. Excellent book that is highly underrated, and I haven't seen enough on any sort of bookish thing. And obviously Gousto in My Head, just to say, Gousto in My Head, also author of colour, if that was not obvious. But yeah, this book, highly underrated, is Dreamland Burning by Jennifer Latham. I don't actually know if Jennifer Latham is a author of colour or not. But, ooh, I just found a bookmark that says, don't doggy your pages. Anywho, this book is in bad nick, by the way, because it was secondhand, and I couldn't get it in the UK, so it was a US paperback. Anyway, Dreamland Burning follows a race riot in, I want to say Tulsa race riot in 1921, which was a real event that took place. And so this is split timeline, which we all know I love. So we've got 1921, and we've also got a different time. Yep, can't remember what the other time is, and it doesn't say on the back. Anyway, and so it splits between these two timelines. In the present, we'll call it the present timeline, someone finds a skeleton of a black man under a building, under a shed that they're doing stuff with, and obviously they want to find out what happened, how he got there. And then we've got because he's got like a bullet wound in his head, and obviously he's buried underneath a building. And then we have our other character who is in 1921 and in amongst the race riots that are happening. And again, the Tulsa race riot of 1921, real event. These things happened. Look up sundown towns, stuff like that as well. You will be absolutely chilled to your core, and if you're not, I don't think they can be friends. But yeah, this follows these two timelines, as one shows you how it goes through the race riot and leads up to this man ending up underneath this thing, and the other one is them from the other side, from the future, trying to figure out what happened and finding out about the race riots and things like that, because it had kind of been quieted down by the town. This book was absolutely phenomenal, and again taught me about a piece of history that I didn't know anything about. Hopping over to France for a little bit for Revolution by Jennifer Donnelly. This book is one of my favourite books of all time. I am not going to lie, I absolutely adored this book. And this again is split timeline, so this follows Andy, also part of the reason I picked it up, who is in the present timeline, again set like when it was actually written, so I don't know. But she's in the present timeline, and her mum has her mum just died. She has to go live with her dad in France, and she's not happy about that because she doesn't really get on with her dad. But in the meantime, she also has to write an essay or write something to do with music for her school that she goes to. And she's in like this really high up school thing because she's like insanely intelligent and very gifted with music and musical instruments. And so she moves to this house with her dad, and they're unpacking, and she's finding all this stuff from the French Revolution. And she gets pulled into the history of the revolution, literally. Like, she goes through the catacombs in France and ends up back during the revolution. And so she flips between these two timelines as someone who is, like, in the present trying to sort of figure out what's going on with her own self and her dad and stuff like that. And then to someone who is ends up becoming very close to the royal family during the revolution. And it shows the revolution in a way, it to me, it gives it a bit more nuance. Like, it's not... A lot of the time we see revolutions like this as royals bad, regular people good. But as I find out after reading this book and then going on a rabbit hole of Googling, these people, and it wasn't the regular people, it was the nobility that were like on the side of the regular people, but were actually just out for themselves, put the Dauphin in, Prince Louis the Dauphin, put him into a tower and allowed him to starve to death. Like, they didn't kill him. Sorry, my computer just went off. They didn't kill him, so they were seen as the good guys. No, they just locked him in a tower for the rest of his life, which was not very long, because he was given very minimal nutrition, and he was 7 years old. They put a 7-year-old in a near windowless tower, isolated him, and left him there until he died. Didn't allow him to get medical care, didn't allow him to have nutrition, like, beyond what would barely keep him alive, or, like, water. That is what these good guys on the side of the revolution did to a child. Like, I don't know much about the revolution. Like, I really don't know that much about it. Obviously, I am not a royalist in general. Like, I think that hoarding excessive amounts of wealth for nobility and stuff like that is absolutely beyond disgusting. But a 7-year-old boy does not deserve that. But that's beyond the point. So this follows the revolution, obviously, highly political, highly tense time in the French history. Also, looks at the disparages between the regular person and the royals. So, you know. Have I lost the plot a little bit? Maybe. So, The Most Beautiful Girl in Cuba is the one I'm pulling for this. Again, the whole series from this follows a family around different events in Cuba. One is the reopening. The first one is the reopening of Cuba after it's shut, after it like closed its borders and everything. And it's about going back to where her family was exiled from and finding out what happened to people that went missing, etc, etc. The second book is about her aunt or great aunt who decides she is going to kill Castro, and she teams up with the CIA to do so. That sounds a bit like literally the CIA were trying to send people in to kill Castro, like it was a real thing. This one follows the Most Beautiful Girl in Cuba, as she was named. So she is a revolutionary that was evacuated from, or is not evacuated from, she was imprisoned by Castro's government because she was revolutionary, and she was seen by Americans that were in there, and they decided to help her escape to the US to then use as a propaganda pawn in the war against Cuba. These all follow female characters, but this one specifically, they're like, oh, we'll free you, but they're actually using her. This series looks so much at the role of women in these situations and how women spies were used a lot of the time because men didn't think that they would be able to, like, men underestimate women a lot and have fallen to that trick for so long. But yeah, there's again so much more to these, politically speaking. What happens when you yap so much? Your power almost dies. Anyway, so The Ghost Ship by Kate Moss. This is the third in a series, and this series in general follows a family epic, so each book is a different generation, and it follows the sort of massacre and the exile of the Huguenots in France, because they are the wrong religion, basically. So these people were literally in one of them, in one piece of history, they are locked into this town, into this city, and slaughtered. Literally, they go door to door, and this actually happened. These are accurate historicals, so like based on real events. This one specifically, we have trans characters, we have LGBT characters in general, and we have a female pirate. So she becomes a pirate because, she owns the ship anyway, and she decides she wants to captain the ship, and then while she's on the water she sees slave ships, and so she decides she is going to de-teeth these slave ships because she does not hold with that. And so this is set in like France and Portugal and Spain and like that, the Mediterranean sort of area, where slave ships would be coming out of Africa that way, to go over to the Americas, or not slavers, but I can't remember what they're called. People would literally, like pirates would take over a ship and sell the people into slavery, or they would go to a town on the water and like kidnap a bunch of people to sell into slavery. And she goes, not on my watch. And so they start destroying these ships. They'll like take them over, take off the people that are being sold into slavery to rescue them, dispose of the rest of them that are trying to sell people into slavery, and then sink the ship. I love this book. Like, this was my favourite in the series. But again, we've got a female main character who is treated specific ways because she is rich, and so she can kind of do what she wants, but she also can't do what she wants because she's a woman. But because she's a woman and she's educated and she's rich, she is seen as like suspicious, and then it turns out she's not exactly straight. Things go a little bit awry for her. Again, trans character, very, very love the trans character. Like, probably my favourite character in this whole thing is either Giles or Louise. Don't make me decide. I apologise, by the way, if this video is really scatty, because I'm just trying to get through all these books. Like, we are halfway there. Next up, we have The Asylum by Karen Coles. This is about a woman who wakes up in an asylum and she is not sure if she's actually crazy and deserves to be in there, or is sane and she's been kept in there for nefarious reasons. Throughout this book, you yourself don't know if she is crazy or if she's not crazy, but this is something that used to happen to women. So often they'd be sent to asylums for the most ridiculous things, like hysteria or wandering womb syndrome or talking back to their husbands or being too precocious. Like, there were so many things women were just sent to asylums for, and the asylums did not treat them well. Like, the treatment of these people was unreal. That's the reason that all these like haunted asylums and stuff like that, because they were horrendously treated. Especially people who were, if you've seen American Horror Story, is it Asylum it's called? Where you have a lesbian character who is treated to conversion therapy. Like, are you kidding me? But this one, again, it's more to do with the woman, the woman in the story who's trying to figure out if she's actually crazy or if she's not, trying to remember how she got there, because there's like, she's missing memories and stuff like that, and flashes keep coming back to her, and yeah. Would not be right if I did not mention this book either, and that is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. This is about a main character who is a woman in science during the 60s, 70s, 60s, and she is sexually assaulted by her boss, and when she retaliates, she is fired for stopping a man from sexually assaulting her. Woo! Because that never ever happens anymore, does it? Absolutely never ever happens anymore. Alexa, play All You Want to Do. So yes, our main character ends up getting fired and has to find another job. Even though she's a highly qualified scientist and chemist, she ends up eventually doing this TV show called Separate Six, where she teaches women how to cook. But it's not just a TV show. She wants to teach people properly chemistry, like how to cook good nutritional food and why food does the things that it does when it's cooked and why you would use certain things, blah blah blah. It's fantastic. This is a feminist rage book, in my opinion. It is marketed so poorly. We have The Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan. This is about Carter and Sadie Kane, who are a brother and sister, and they are both mixed race. They have a black father and a white mother, and their mother died years and years and years ago, and they're only now sort of finding out what happened when their dad takes them to the Natural History Museum, I think, British Museum, and summons an Egyptian god and blows up the museum. And so Carter and Sadie are launched into this sort of world of Egyptian gods. Now, like I said, Carter and Sadie have a mum and a dad who are white mum, black dad. Carter took up after his dad, and so he is a black teenage boy, young teenage boy. I think he's 13, 14 in this. And Sadie very much took after her mum, so she is white with blonde hair, blue eyes. And so when their mum died, Carter's dad decided to keep him with him, because their mum's parents would only take Sadie because she was white like them, and they wouldn't take Carter, basically because he was black. And this also discusses at points where Carter talks about how going through airport security, for example, he has to think of specific things. If he encounters the police, he has to think and say specific things. The way his dad taught him to always look smart, like he always wears a suit and stuff like that, because they need to be better because they are black. Because if he is seen in a pair of joggers and like I'm in leggings and a jumper, like leggings, a jumper, and a vest top, and to me that's just loungewear. But because of the way that people of, specifically black people, are treated, it would be seen as sloppy or lazy or less than in some way. And so Carter is taught by his dad to always try and present himself as like in a way that makes him come across acceptable, if that makes sense. And you really get to see this as well in the interactions that he and Sadie have, because when him and Sadie go on the run within this world, Sadie has a totally different, like, she will do things that Carter wouldn't think of doing. Like, Sadie gives him the fear because he knows if he did that as a black boy, there would be consequences that Sadie, as a white girl, does not have to face. This book, honestly, this series is so underrated. On a similar vein, we have Zachary Yang and the Dragon Emperor by Jiren J. Zhao. This is a book that follows Zachary Yang, and it is kind of like I can't remember what the card game that was it compared to. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or like something like that. So there's this card game, but they all have like VR headsets and they can like fight these creatures and stuff like that. But one time when he's doing this, a dead emperor comes out and tries to possess him. And so he has to help the emperor to save China, basically. This is set in like modern times, so it's not like a past time, but the emperor's from it's like the first emperor of China. The reason I've picked this up, one, again, author of colour, two, non-binary author, who is femme presenting, so has, there's so many things going against this author when it comes to like publishing and stuff like that. So I will always rep this author and I will always tell you to buy this author and support this author. Anyway, in this book we also look at the differences and the diasporas, is that the right word, within China. So I didn't know this. I did not know this until I read this book and did some more research, that China actually has two sort of majority religions. So you have, not even two majority religions, you have Christian Chinese people and you have Muslim Chinese people. I think there's probably also like Buddhists and stuff like that as well, but this specifically looks at the way that Muslim Chinese people are seen as, again, second-class citizens, less than, have been put into concentration camps and have been treated in a totally different way from the majority Christian Chinese. Like, it's acceptable to be a Buddhist. It's like they almost see them as like hippies, I suppose. I'm probably like really like nutshelling that. But Muslim Chinese people have been persecuted in China. Persecuted is the word I've been looking for a few of these. Have been persecuted in China for thousands of years. Thousands of years they have been persecuted. And this shows that in here because Zachary Young is a Muslim Chinese. He's a Chinese Muslim. God, this word's the wrong way around there. And so, like, showing that in this book, again, gives me perspective on something I knew nothing about. I'm not religious, so I don't know really much about religion in general. I'm not Chinese, so I don't really know much about China in general. But it also looks at the fact that Zachary Young is he's not even a first generation immigrant. His mother fled to the US with him when he was a baby. And so they are immigrants. They are, I believe, illegal immigrants. I think they snuck or were smuggled into the country. And he sees himself as more American than Chinese, which then brings a whole different aspect into what's going on as well. Swinging back to the US, we have the Casket Girls series, which, again, it has a lot of things going on. This is based in New Orleans after a Katrina-like storm hits and the levees break, and it follows our main character who goes back to New Orleans after this has all happened with her dad, because that's where they live, to sort of go back to their home, see the devastation, see what they can fix. Just go back home, really. But there's so much that is this covered. I mean, NOLA itself has a massively diverse population. Like, you've got so many different kinds of people there, and this covers so many different kinds of magic as well. So we have like Creole magic, and we have voodoo magic, and we have Native American magic, and we have English magic and French magic and German magic. There's so many different types of magic that are integrated into this in such a fabulous way, in so many different ways that different characters show the different people that live in New Orleans. This book, honestly, this series is incredible. But we're also looking at the fact that we're looking at the end or the tail end of a natural disaster. Like, America's just had a whole bunch of hurricanes again, and devastation just absolutely wrecked the places. Katrina itself, and this is, like I say, based on Katrina, the hurricane did not hit New Orleans. What happened was the levees broke that hold back all the water, and when the levees broke, New Orleans just flooded. Like, people drowned in their attics. And then places like FEMA's mentioned specifically in this because Isaac works with them to try and help with the recovery and stuff like that. They are kind of, again, I don't know what, from Hurricane, is it Helene that just happened recently? I've learned that it's not as simple as like a natural disaster happens and they go out. Like, there's a whole system, but this specifically talks about the difficulties that people have with FEMA and the funding not being there for FEMA, and the way that people have lost everything, and the government basically goes, which is basically what's happening right now. There's no like immediate help for people in these situations, and they sort of have to pick their lives up. Like, this follows that alongside its fantasy witchy. This series is so good. Now I'm going to talk about one of my favourite authors of all time, and that is Chloe Lease. This series follows, again, disabled characters. There's so many disabled characters in this, I keep saying. It's like someone said to Chloe Lease, you can't have that many disabled characters in your books, and she went, hold my beer! Because it is disabled, all the way through it. We do have one family sort of throughout, so the Bergman family, all the siblings of the Bergman family. In this we have so many different, again, types of disability. We have chronic pain, we have arthritis, we have autism, we have anxiety, we have deafness. Again, like, diverse stories are important. So many things that are being banned in the States and stuff right now are stories about people who are not just straight white hetero people. This family has people who, I mean, they're all white, I'm not gonna lie, they're all white, but they're not all straight. A lot of them are disabled. There's a lot going on. But disability rep is so important. Disability rep is something that you don't often get to see, or you never used to get to see in books, and now it is popping up in so many different books in so many different ways, and just so yeah, read your disability rep. So then we have The Bear and the Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This series of this trilogy follows our main character, who was a child at the start of this one, and she grows up throughout the series, and it is mainly about Russia as it is switching from the old ways, the old gods, into, I don't know if it's Catholicism or just Christianity, whatever, Christianity coming through and destroying the traditions and things like that that this country has built up and these towns have built up. And our main character in this, whose name I can't remember, Vasya. It's actually a retelling of the beautiful Vasya, if I'm not wrong. She can see the gods. She can see the old gods and the house gods and things like that. That the gods in this world are not like gods. They're like, there's a little sprite god thing that looks after the hearth, and one that helps clean, and like one that lives in the lake and live in the woods and like things like that. It's not like, and they're being completely destroyed by people's belief dissipating because of this new religion. And there's so much in this when it comes to the sweep of this religion and the way that people abuse their power and abuse their sort of power is the only word I can really think of. But this priest comes to town and he wants to eradicate the old ways. Honestly, great series. Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. Again, trans author. And this book follows 5 friends who are witches and were induced into this coven, and they've since grown up and different things have happened. There was a war between the warlocks and the witches because the witches are more powerful and the warlocks did not like that. And there's one in particular who wants to kind of take over the world. There's also a trans character in this. The rep is so good. Like the way the trans character is persecuted, it is horrific, and at the same time so good. Good, not like good as in like rep, as in like you need to read this book, not good as in like I agree with this sort of thing. We've also got witches, we've got feminism, we've got personal relationships between women. It's such a good book. Goldilocks is about a future where women specifically have been restricted in what they can do, so they're not allowed jobs in STEM anymore, they're not allowed to do certain things. It's very much getting back to like trying to reverse back to the 1950s, but at the same time there's also a kind of space race happening, and so these women end up hijacking the spaceship and trying to go on this mission on their own. And they're not just random women, like one of them is one of the people that designed the spacecraft, and she's then been kicked off. She was supposed to go, but has been kicked off of it because she is a woman. So this follows that sort of, so this book will make you so mad. So mad. Like, it is set in a world where resources have become less and less and less because of the way that we abuse this planet, and this mission was all about finding somewhere else that we can escape to stop the human race from being destroyed. It is such a good book, but it is so harrowing and it will make you so mad. The Betrayal of Thomas True by AJ West. AJ West, excellent author, love him. He is honestly fantastic. AJ West himself is a gay man who lives with his husband, who is also fabulous. And The Betrayal of Thomas True follows the real history of, or a fictionalised version of the real history of the Mollies of London. Mollies were a gay man that would dress up as a woman, so not trans people, but gay men that would express their gayness in these alter egos that were called Mollies. So closer to drag than trans, if that makes sense. But this is like the 16 somethings. So 1715, oh my god, me and dates, we don't do well. So society was different back then, and this follows Thomas True, who escapes his home because he is gay and runs off to London where he thinks he can be more of himself, and he ends up interacting with these mollies and going to the molly clubs. And at the same time, these molly clubs are very dangerous places to be because they are raided by the police, and it is illegal and punishable by death to be caught in an act of being gay, basically. For men, not for women though. But again, this is true to history. We also follow 2 justices who are very, very homophobic. Like, they just want to find gay people and punish them, basically. And so you are mixed between Thomas, who is trying to fire himself out. There's also somebody who is killing the Mollies, and this mystery is tied up in that. And then you've got these justices who are getting closer and closer to London, and the danger is sort of coming in towards them. Next we have Iron Widow by Jean J. Zhao. Again, like I said, love this author, they are excellent. And Iron Widow follows this society where there are, it's Pacific Rim meets something else, and I can't remember what it is. Handmaid's Tale meets Pacific Rim. There we go. So in Pacific Rim and in this, there are these massive, I can't remember what they're called, but these massive machines that are piloted by people to fight these big monsters that come out of the water or across the land, whatever. And in this world, you need to use your chi to fuel these machines or to drive these machines. And so the men are the drivers of these machines and the women are used as batteries. Literally, these concubines are sort of sold into the military to be used as batteries, so their chi is used up to use these machines. And our main character goes, F that. Her sister was killed in this and she decides she's going to kill the man that killed her. But then things go a little bit off kilter when she does in fact kill him, but not in the way you'd expect. This again looks at a lot of, it's based on China, or based on a certain era of Chinese history. So women still feet bind, women are seen as less than. It is, the men are up here and the women are it's they prefer to have male children. Again, I don't know how you're going to populate if you only have male children, because who's going to have the babies? Nobody thought this through. Anyway, and yeah, a lot of the time women are sold to different things, like I say, as concubines, sold to different families to be wives for their precious boys. The family in this is terrible, her family is terrible, but this character is just incredible. It looks at mental health as well. I cannot say enough about this series. Next up is Hex by Jenny Fagan. This follows Gillis Duncan, who is a real person. Yes, she's an Outlander, but she was a real person, and she was tried and convicted of witchcraft. And this follows her last night as she is visited by someone from the future. So it doesn't follow Gillis's point of view, it follows the woman from the future. It's a very, very short book, but this woman from the future goes back and visits Gillis in her cell and sees the depravity and the way she's treated for being a witch, a woman. Really, this is just a look at how, again, it's the witchcraft, insanity that happened, and how women were treated so poorly, and men, but mainly women. If you were too smart, if you were a wise woman, if you were good at healing, if something unfortunate happened and you happened to be around, just the whole witch trial fucking snafu that happened. And it is a really painful read, this one, because Gillis is just this young woman who is scared and doesn't want to die, but yet she's been found guilty of something that she's not done, and so has to spend her last night knowing that she's going to the gallows. It's really important that we tell these stories because, like I said with the asylum, the way women have been treated historically, or people who are just different have been treated, is just so... yeah. And Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. Yeah, this has been bad because it's gay. Really, we can't have gay people or mental health issues or anything like that. No, think of the children. Yeah, so this is about Charlie and Nick who fall in love. Nick thinks he is straight, turns out he is bisexual, and Charlie is gay and was outed the year before and suffered serious bullying, which led him to have serious mental health issues, which are explored in later books. Again, we're looking at the way that queer people are treated, LGBTQ plus people are treated. We have trans characters, we have so much going on in this series. Even though it is a graphic novel, there's just so much that is filtered, just punched in this book, into this series. The thing is with all these LGBTQ plus books, in so many places they are not allowed because being gay is illegal. Pride is still a protest. Pride has always been a protest because we don't have equal rights. Until everybody across the world has equal rights, we're not finished. Anatomy Love Story follows our main character, who is a girl who wants to be a surgeon. But she cannot be a surgeon because she is a girl and it is the 1800s. So she pretends to be a boy, her brother specifically, to get into the surgeon's class, and the surgeon finds out that she is actually a female and decides to kick her out of the class because no, women can't have education, that's just no. And so she makes this sort of bet with him that if she can pass his exam on her own without his help, without his classes, he has to let her be his apprentice, basically. And so he agrees to this, and she teams up with this resurrection man, who is a grave robber, basically, to bring her body so that she can practice on them. There's also a fantasy element in this as well. People are going missing. Poor people are going missing and coming back with less parts of their bodies than they had when they were kidnapped. So we are talking arms, hands, eyeballs. They are being stolen for their organs, and these are poor people in the lower echelons of society that are being taken because they are not going to be missed. How often do you see serial killers? I mean, it might just be me because I really like true crime, but serial killers and stuff get away with stuff for so long because the people they take are transients or runaways or sex workers or homeless or, people that are deemed inferior in society, and so people don't care about them. And that's starts to happen in this one. And they want to get to the bottom of what's going on because they actually care. On the medical train, Wilder Girls follows the school that have been infected by something called the tox. I believe that's what they call it. And the school is on an island, and to kind of solve the problem that they're having, the government decides to just shut down the island. Nobody gets off, nobody gets on. They send food to them and resources, but the help that was supposed to come never comes. And so these girls are still just going through it. It's a body horror. It's really gross, but it's really, really good. But it looks at, again, there's LGBTQ plus characters in this, but it also looks at isolation, and it looks at the fact that they have been sort of left by the world. Like, they have been shut off, cut off, and are just being left to die, basically, because nobody cares. Cinderella is dead. We have girls in here who have to go to a ball every year in sort of reverence to Cinderella, who was a real real historical character in this book. And their men can get a wee look at them so that they can decide whether or not they want to buy them for their wives. Yeah. Sounds great, doesn't it? And our main character is like, hell nah. And also, I'm gay. And also POC. And also the author, Kaylin Barron, POC. So, yeah. But yeah, this still, like, people can still... And of course the younger ones get bought first. Because men. Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde. This is a society... There goes another brick. This is a society where people are graded on their colours. Literally, they have this thing. So, like, our main character is a red. There are people who are greens, pink. Like, they're all the colours. And then that decides that decides where they are in society. And then within each of the colour, you have a rank in there as well. So, the more colour you can see, like the more shades of that colour you can see, because it's actually like a visual thing. The more colours of red, for example, he can see, the higher up in society of reds he will be, but the reds are still quite low on the societal scale, so like greens are above him, so they treat him accordingly. And at the very, very bottom are the greys, who can only see in shades of grey. This is a hierarchical society based on colour, but like in a different way. I really enjoy this book, even though it's really, really weird. And of course, our main characters decide they want to smash the establishment. Of course. The book that was throwing itself at me is The Roommate by Rosie Danan. This is a book that is not only a romance, but it also looks at sex work. And our main character, I was going to say our second main character, our main male character in this is a sex worker. He is a porn star, and a very popular one at that. And he is treated... I don't even know what the word is. But yeah, this book is pretty much a critique of the sex work industry and how sex workers are treated and how degraded they are by people, because it's still work. Work is work. And there's nothing wrong. It's the oldest profession. Like, let's get this. It is the world's oldest profession, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. At the end of the day, like, you do you, boo. As long as you're not hurting anybody, what does it matter? But this book, absolutely, like, I was telling my mum about this book because of how incredible I thought it was to represent the critique of how sex workers are treated. Like, they were treated like objects. Like, people think that just because they do this sort of work, that they can treat them poorly. And there's a whole conversation to be had about, like, revenge porn and all that sort of stuff as well. But, like, this, fantastic. Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This is a book about a woman who is asked to be... My books are just going everywhere. Who is asked to be a companion for a man who has been in an accident, and he is a paraplegic? Quadriplegic. He is disabled. He is paralysed from the chest down. And so he used to be like this guy. He would, like, jump off cliffs and do all this, like, wacky adrenaline junkie stuff. And now he is permanently stuck in this chair, paralysed due to a motorbike accident, which was not his fault. He was not even on the motorbike. And so this story really is about, to me, this story is about disabled people and their autonomy and their choices, because he decides that he wants to go to Switzerland to end his own life. And his parents and his parents really, because he doesn't have any friends, because his friends abandoned him when he became disabled. And he decides he wants to take his own life, and his parents have been trying to persuade him otherwise, and so they bring in our main character Louisa to kind of help change his mind. And I'm kind of glad that in the end he doesn't change his mind and he does go through with his plan, because at the end of the day, like, people criticise this book by saying that it's saying that disabled people are less than and that they should just take their own lives because they're disabled, but that's not how I read this book as a disabled person. To me, this is about his autonomy. This is about his decision. He has a condition that will never get better. He has a condition that is causing him extreme distress and whatever else background goes on inside his head. And he has made this decision. And he has made this decision for himself, not for anybody else. And his autonomy should be respected. There's a massive debate going on at the moment in the UK about end-of-life care for people with terminal and chronic illnesses, and whether they should be allowed to end their own lives on their own terms. And I am actually quite passionate about this, because I don't think it's humane to allow people to die the way that we allow people to die. There are ways that we can help people to pass much easier than they do. Like, if you allowed an animal to die, the way you allowed humans to die sometimes, it would be seen as animal cruelty. Like, nobody blinks an eye when you take a dog or a cat or another animal that's at the end of his life and is suffering and allow the vet to euthanize it. Everybody says that is the right decision. But then when it comes to humans, we have to suffer until the end. Like, there's a point sometimes where people can be in such bad pain, especially with things like cancers, where painkillers don't do anything. Like, you are just in a world of hurt. You might be, like, there's so many reasons why someone might decide to do this. And personally, I think that is up to the person. Would I want a loved one to die? No, obviously I don't. Things like that. But at the same time, I've seen people die inhumanely, and I think it should be their decision to be allowed to go peacefully. And this book, to me, is about that bodily autonomy of the disabled person, rather than the decisions of the able people who are just like, no, but we want you to be here. It's like, you don't have to live this life. You don't have to live in this body. It doesn't affect you in that way. Yes, it affects them in different ways, but disabled people are not given bodily autonomy, and we are infantilized so much. And to me, this actually honours a disabled person having their own autonomy. Apparently we're deciding books on whichever one throws itself at me next. Okay, so we've got Red, Written, Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I'm going to very quickly go over this because of the St Martin's Press ban or boycott that we're doing at the moment. So this follows a gay person of colour whose mum is the first female president of the United States and running through a new campaign to get a second term. And the prince of, or one of the princes of England, who is also gay and is not allowed to be gay because he's a royal. Do we see where this is going? So we've got, like, and then the fact that they're, things that happen in this book, the way the press treats them, the way that their families treat them, because, like, the different ways their families treat them because they're gay, etc, etc, etc. On a similar vein, we have Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. This is about Luke and Oliver, and Luke is the son of two very famous rock stars from the 70s or whatever it is. I can't quite remember, I'm not gonna lie. And so he is followed by the paparazzi and photographed in inopportune times, made to look bad in the press, and really, like, treated very, very poorly. And so to clean up his image and not lose his job, he needs to have a boyfriend who makes him look good. And so Oliver ends up being the guy that he fake dates, and Oliver is a lawyer. He's also gay, but he's gay in a different way from, like, he has only straight friends and he doesn't get involved in LGBTQ plus things, and there's a whole thing about that as well. While Oliver only has LGBTQ plus friends except the one guy, and they have this whole debate between them about which one's better and why neither of them are actually better, and etc, etc. And again, Oliver comes from this echelon of people where it's like they're really snobby and nobility and stuff like that, and, you know, looking at different levels of society, Luke doesn't think he's good enough because of his, like, lower status in society. But again, the way they're treated in the press, the way they're treated by other people. Here's a good one. Punching the Air by Ibi Zoboi and Yusuf Salam. This is, again, told in verse. I don't know why I'm saying again. I don't know. I've not talked about the other one that's in verse yet. And this is about a black man who is in jail for something he did not do. I will read you the back. Amal Shahid has always been an artist and a poet, but even in his diverse art school, because of the bias system, he's seen as disruptive and unmotivated. Then, one fateful night, an altercation in a gentrifying neighbourhood escalates into tragedy. Boys just being boys turns out to be only true when those boys are white. 16 years old, he is convicted of a crime he didn't commit and sent to prison. Oh, he didn't do it. Okay, yeah, I was right. So he is in jail for being black in the wrong place, basically. And this book is actually based on Yusuf Salam's life. So it is 5 men called the Exonerated Five, or 5 boys. I don't quite know if they have aged the main character down, but Yusuf Salam was himself arrested and convicted and sent to jail for a crime he did not commit, along with 4 other black men, boys. I'm not entirely sure. I would have to Google the Exonerated Five, but you can also Google the Exonerated Five. And in so many places, black people and black men especially are treated very differently, and black boys are treated like men when they are not, in such a different way, and treated so much more harshly than their white counterparts. When it comes to crimes, if you look at the crime stats, more black men are in prison in the US than white men, and for longer terms for lesser charges. Especially like things like drug charges, they can have like a little bit of weed on them and they get a heavy sentence, whereas like a white guy would get a warning. It is statistically proven, it has been studied, don't argue with me, go Google it. Keeping with the trend of that, this is the other one that is written in verse, and this is about a boy whose brother is shot and killed by a rival gang member, and so he decides, or he knows that the rules are that you get even, and so he goes to get his brother's gun to go and shoot the guy that shot his brother and killed his brother. And so this follows him as he gets the gun and gets into the lift, and on every floor of the building someone else gets into the lift, and it's this harrowing story about gun violence and the way it affects people and the way it ripples out and disproportionately affects black neighbourhoods, black people. I cannot say enough about this, but again, I think this should be taught in all schools, but no, it's banned. It would be banned, because we can't be talking about critical race theory. What? Can't be talking about critical race theory at all. No. So yeah, read this to get rid of fascists. While we're on the subject, I don't know how they ended up out of order, but we have The Hate You Give, On the Come Up, and Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. This follows these all follow different black characters in this one area. So Thug and Concrete Rose are father and daughter, so Thug follows the daughter and Concrete Rose follows the dad before the daughter was born. On the Come Up follows a different character who goes to the same school as the first girl. But these books are mainly about the differences in the ways that black people are treated. So, for example, the main character in the first one goes to a school that is mainly white, and it is a private school, so it is like, you know, private school, mainly white people, you can imagine. And when she's being driven home from a party one night by her friend, they are stopped by the police and he is shot and killed. This is a direct response to the police brutality and violence that happens towards black people and the killing of men such as George Floyd. These are fantastic and give a fantastic look at the lives that some of these characters live. Like I said, this one follows the dad of this character. So he used to be a gang leader and then he decided he didn't want any more of it because it put his family in danger, and so he backed out of that. But this shows you how he got out of it, basically. Concrete Rose, I think, is my favourite. Like, just unbelievably talented. Angie Thomas is an unbelievably talented writer. She covers so many different stories. On the Come Up is about a rapper, a girl who wants to be a rapper, and her dad was a rapper, I believe. But again, he was also killed by gun violence. This trilogy, honestly, absolutely fantastic. Angie Thomas is a genius. Again, another author of colour, and someone you should be supporting. Don't let these fade into the background. Here's The Witching by Alexis Simpson, another black author, and this is a horror, and a gross horror at that, which is kind of, it reminds me of The Village. It reminds me of The Village, the film The Village. And this follows our main character who is black and is, I don't know, I can't remember if she's accused of being a witch or just ends up like meeting witches. It's very, I'm not used to reading this type of horror, so I blacked out a lot of it because I was freaked out. I'm not gonna lie, I don't read horror, so this one freaked me out, but I kept it because I would love to reread it, because every time I reread stuff I take a little bit more in, and it is very beloved on BookTube. So this is very like small town, small village vibes. I don't know if this is a specific year that it was set. Honestly, like I say, I can't remember very much, but our main character is seen as different and weird and kind of blamed for a lot of the things that happen, bad things that happen in the village, because she was born breech and she is, you know, a minority woman in this village. But this is a horror. If you like horror, again, I blacked most of it out because horror scares me. Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I grabbed this one at the last minute because I think this is, well, the thing is, I read this in school, in high school, and so we did like a deep dive into the background of it and the analysis of it and blah, 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 blah. But this looks at what happens when society does not exist. So these boys are on a class trip and they crash, their plane crashes into this island, and this isolated island, and all the adults die, and it's just the boys that are left. These boys that go to, again, a private school, and for a while they continue the sort of societal norms that they are aware of. The prefects are in charge, everybody else sort of toes the line, they divvy up tasks and they look after their weaker members, etc, etc. But the longer they are there, the more they start to descend into chaos, because the ones with the power want more power and the ones who are being subjugated don't like that. And so this becomes darker, and it shows what would happen if, or it shows like an idea of what would happen if society was left without all of its sort of mores and structure that we have. Things like police and the court systems, and like, there's a whole thing. But if you look at analysis and stuff like this of that, it is a very, very good thing. A very good book. I really enjoyed it. It's really funny because William Golding was asked why he chose boys and not girls for the story, and he said if it was a bunch of girls, this would never have happened. Which always makes me laugh. Going into another darkish one, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is about a girl named Vanessa, obviously, and when she's at high school, when she's 15, she is abused by a teacher. She's in a relationship with her teacher. She's abused by her teacher, and now as an adult, the Me Too movement is happening, and someone else accuses this teacher of sexual assault and abuse, and Vanessa is sort of reminiscent over what happened to her. She does not believe that it's abuse. She believed they were in a relationship. She's still in contact with him, but now they're not together because she is too old for him, and she feels that is a failing on her part. And she's kind of stuck in this middle ground of she's been groomed by this man, and so she is on his side. She doesn't see him as a bad man, but she's also starting to, as I say, reflect and reminisce on what happened to her as a child and realise that it's not right. Again, things in this are quite dark. There is very explicit detail of what happened to her, and there's so many trigger warnings for this. But this, again, it looks at this was triggered by the Me Too movement, and this is a real thing. That I know somebody who was in this situation. One of my old teachers was just recently, in the last 5 years, struck off for having a relationship with one of his students. Are you kidding? I can't. Yeah, so this was absolutely, I think this is fantastic. I think this is a very accurate look at this thing, because the girl that's reported him, she sees it as a very, she's older as well, she sees it as very obvious that this is grooming, this is abuse, but Vanessa doesn't, because she has been so well manipulated by this man that she doesn't see it that way. And so you see Vanessa's point of view as she's trying to solve this cognitive dissonance and figure out sort of what's going on, and when she has these revelations, deal with the sort of mental health smacks that come alongside that. And finally, I'm on my last book. I'm on the last book. Well done if you've made it this far. Again, I could grab so many more books, but I've just, like I say, grabbed until I had no room left over here. But the last one is Pucking Around by Emily Rath. Emily Rath currently is a bit under fire on TikTok for being a staunch supporter of not fascism, shall we say, and she is on the forefront of authors who are saying that reading is indeed political, that reading by virtue of doing it, you're in a political act. She's an expert in politics, by the way. She's a doctor in politics and peace studies. I can't remember it is. You can go see it on her TikTok or Instagram. All the videos are there. And yeah, so the fact that people are trying to tell her that reading is not political, she's like, I literally have the qualifications to tell you are wrong. But let's get back to her book, Pucking Around. This is the first in a series. There are 3 books currently out and another one on the way. This book is, again, banned for vulgarity because we have queer characters in this and we have smart. So this book is a polyam witches, pure and simple polyam. We have 4 people in this relationship, 2 male, I think it's FM, I think is how it goes. So the 2 male characters are together and with the female main character, and then the third guy is only with the female main character, but it's very they're all in a they are a foursome, they are in a relationship, but he just doesn't do things with the guys. But they will all at the same time. You know what? It's polyam. It's actual polyam. And again, this is a book that is seen as being vulgar and less than because of the type of book that it is. But these are real people's lives. Obviously fictional characters, but there are polyam people in this world, and their relationships are not worth less because they are different. They're not just man-woman. There are queer people everywhere whose relationships are not less than because of that. When will we learn to stop treating people who are not exactly like us just normally? Anyway, I love the series. I think it's great. This is a 707-page romance novel that I ate up. I love all the characters. I love the way that they have this relationship. This poly relationship, to me, is incredible. I know nothing about poly relationships, but the communication in here is top notch. Like, one thing that they're absolutely, like, solid on is the communication. I saw someone critique this by saying that they don't like the way that one of the characters is forced to participate in this relationship. And what they mean is this character is told that he has to be all in or all out. They are not going to be, like, they are in a these three are in a relationship. If he wants to be in a relationship with this woman, he needs to accept that she's also in a relationship with these two guys, and that they come as a package deal. Like, he doesn't have to be with these guys, but to be with her, he can't be like, well, she's just mine. You can't have her because I want her. He needs to respect the other people within this relationship. And if he's not comfortable with that, then he's welcome to walk away. But if he wants in, he needs to accept that they're all together. Like, that to me is just good communication, setting boundaries. That is not forcing him to participate in their relationship. He wants to be with her, but she is with these two guys. And so they're telling, like, they all say to him that he cannot basically annex her. Like, he can't come in and be like, oh no, you only have to be with me, you're not allowed to be with them, because that's not what she wants. Like, that to me is effective communication and boundary setting. But what do I know? So there we go. There are several books. I did not count them. I'm not counting them. I've been filming for 2 hours to bring you these books that are inherently political. Because reading is inherently political. I could probably find ways of pulling more and more books. Like, there's so many ways that your books are political. It's so important that we read diversely. It's so important that we include the voices of people who are not just straight white hetero people. Like, I myself do not have that diverse a shelf. I'm not gonna lie. I am working our way to making my shelves more diverse. That's a goal I ultimately have, and I just don't understand how people can say that books are not political. The act of reading itself, I as a woman reading, the fact that I have a degree, the fact that I'm married to another woman, the fact that she owns this house, the fact that I own my car, like, all these things are inherently political because at one time we did not have these rights, we did not have these abilities. And so therefore, every time I pick up a book and read it, it is political. And some people think that being political is like, there's like a hard line. And it's not. Like, yeah, okay, I see, like, I can understand why you'd be confused, but this is where you have an option to educate yourself instead of just being like, well, I'm not going to be political, I voted this way, so if you think I'm a bad person for voting for someone who wants to take away your rights, then I'm going to be butthurt, because that's what's happening. Really, it's people who voted for the wrinkled Cheeto who are saying that they are now unhappy that people are not happy with them. Like, they're hurt that people are not happy that they voted for somebody who wants to take away rights from marginalised people and ban books. I don't understand how you don't get that. And especially people who read things like Hunger Games, like the books I've picked, the books I've not picked. Reading is inherently political, and it doesn't make it not fun. You can still read for fun. You can still read fun, silly books. Like, they're, you know, yeah. Just the fact that some of these authors are female, that they are people of colour, they are disabled. People from marginalised communities have been pushed down for so long, and now they are just being shown in media. And some people don't like that. So that makes it political. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling at you. Thanks so much if you made it all the way through this video. If you did, and you want to let me know you were here, if you just put some hearts, some kind of heart in the thing, because I need the love right now. Because I am Scottish and the American election doesn't particularly affect me, but I'm so unbelievably scared for the people that it will affect, and the backlash that will happen because of this. So give me some love down in the comments. And if you want to leave me a comment, recommend me some of your favourite books, some of your favourite authors. Just let's share amazing and diverse authors and books that we all love, if that made any sense. I'm so sorry, I'm gonna go, I'm tired, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.